Got your sillies out?
No, they're coming. I can feel it. Sorry.
Sorry, you started.
Oh, look, maybe it's just the outlet. I think I can feel it. It's like sitting right here. So you're going to do something and I'm going to giggle. And then we'll be all good.
I'm serious.
I know, you're very serious.
Welcome to the Integration Station. I'm your host, Michael, a child and adolescent occupational therapist. And with me is my co-host, Eleanor.
I'm also a child and adolescent occupational therapist. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Eleanor. Welcome back.
You too.
Thank you. Each week, we'll be discussing how we can support the young people in our lives and hopefully find the fun in doing that. We have a Q&A format, so we'll take your questions, throw in some of our own, and provide some insight where we can. So,
what about the learning?
The learning as well.
Learning is important, yeah.
So, yes, welcome back. Did you have a nice break?
I did have a nice break. Yeah. Actually, Christmas is not too hectic in our household, so I had nice time with family, nice time with friends. I took my dog to the beach every day, which was the best. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, it was pretty, as the thing in the last episode I mentioned on Boxing Day, the Christmas day was quite hectic. It was pretty busy. I had weddings and friends here and a lot of family events, but a good time to catch up with people. So
it's one of your many other roles, DJ? MC?
Sure, yeah. I think I might have done a bit of DJing in there as well. The DJing I'll leave to Eli, our producer. So we are back for season 5. I think officially we call this season 5. I'm going to add in a couple of extra segments. We're going to add in 2 segments. And we've got a theme song for both of them.
Can I have a demonstration?
Well, I can't sing it.
A snippet? Oh, it's a surprise for all of us then.
Surprise for all of us. The first one is Activity of the Week. And the second one is Regulation Strategy of the Week. Why? Well, because lots of people reach out and ask us how we can follow up things that we do in therapy, or what works for you, or what is a strategy that we can utilize. And I think, why not start the episode with that? And if you want to tune out after this, then at least you've got some info right at the start. Not encouraging that, but I don't know, a bit of fun for us as well to share some ideas.
Yeah, sounds good.
Therapy activity of the week.
Therapy activity of the week. What's yours? Sorry, that was quite aggressive, unintentionally.
No, it's a great question. I'm ready to answer it. I was doing, got a young friend that I've recently started working with, and we were doing some activities on the trampoline today, or the other day, I should say, sorry. And I feel like that's a really good one to start with. We were doing a bit of a sequencing game. So we came up with about 5 moves on the trampoline, like a bottom bounce, knee bounce, spin. And for each of those moves, we assigned a symbol to it, whether it's circle, triangle, star, whatever. And then we made it into a bit of a code activity. So I would draw out, starting with 3 of the shapes that we had come up with together. He'd have to have a look at the code, and then he'd have to action the sequence of movements in the order that we had written down. Now, to begin with, he would be able to have a look at the code for the entire duration. But as we kind of leveled up, I'd give him some time to have a look at it. I'd turn it around and see if he could recall what the order of the shapes was to challenge that working memory. And with the movements as well, there's lots of planning and moving both sides of the body. So that coordination piece is factored in there too. And we even took turns with that. So he would have to draw out the code for me. So a bit of, handwriting practice in there as well. And it was great. Every time we'd both have success, we would level up and see how many we could do in a row.
Cool.
It was cool, yeah.
Yeah, good activity. I guess, as you said, lots of components there being worked on, and the movement certainly helps from a regulation perspective. But I think the other thing is, when you're doing any movement, whilst you're doing some of those cognitive activities, it can distract you in a way that means you have to tap into more of that active working memory.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you can be, I have to process where I'm going and stepping on which squares or...
Yeah.
So, a lot of information there.
And if you're thinking about a little person who maybe is still working out how to move their body to action these different movements, all that brain power is going into the coordination piece, and then they're trying to remember a sequence, I feel like it taps into, like you said, a lot of really good skills and lots of things that they're using in other areas like routines or getting ready for school, that kind of stuff.
True.
Yeah. What about you? What's been your favourite this week?
Oh, I did one yesterday with a young man. He's in his late 20s, and he and I were doing an activity where he's not that keen on climbing, so he does like letters, and so we did a game where I had just some basic Post-it notes that I just scribbled a few different letters on there, and the aim was to try and scale at our Mile End site. We've got this like climbing wall.
Yep.
And the aim was to sort of scale the wall at a height that was comfortable for him and obtain as many letters as he could.
Okay.
And then collate those letters and he has to rearrange them into the word. And if he found the word, then he gets that item. So there were a bunch of items there. And and if he was getting a bit stuck, I'd give him a clue. I might say, look, it's something you eat, or it might be a colour or something along those lines. And so that was quite motivating.
Like a physical word scramble.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool.
Exactly. And I guess the aim there wasn't so much the words, like the processing of the words and the understanding of that was quite a skill that he has. It's his strength, but the challenge for him was more about that upper limb control and that, being a little bit more uncertain about putting his body up at a height and being able to hold his weight up against that wall. Really challenged that, but he was so motivated by the words. Yeah. He was quite happy to get up on that wall. So
I think it talks a lot to that meaningful engagement, doesn't it? Like doing an activity that tailors to our strengths so that we can also support some of the other elements and we're not thinking about that as much because there's still that level of enjoyment there.
Yeah,
I think that's such a key part of OT for sure.
Yeah, motivation as well.
Yeah, and I love with that you could, I know that you did that on the climbing wall because you had access to that, but I could see how it would work on, having the Post-its on a playground. So you're having to move throughout that or you're on your tummy on a swing and trying to collect them. I think that's a very translatable activity that can work in heaps of spaces.
Yeah, you could do it at home. Just no bookshelves or anything that could fall over. So.
Okay, we'll avoid that one.
No increasing risks, but
won't hide them in the drawer of knives and things like that in the kitchen. Yeah, okay.
None of that stuff. Try and keep it.
Safety first, guys.
Try and keep it safe.
Regulation, the strategy of the week.
What about regulation strategy of the week? Anything that's worked this week?
Yeah. Do you know what? In the holidays, I mentioned that our family and friends have little people that I've had the chance to spend time with as well. And I just can't help but put the OT hat on when we're playing and doing different games. And I think the regulation strategy of the week for me has been around deep pressure. And the way that we had done that was building these forts and cubbies and tunnels. Like I used chairs from the dining table alongside the couch, blanket over the top, pillows down the centre, and really getting kids to work through those little spaces. And it was so engaging for them. My little nephew loves trains, so the tunnel became a tunnel for the trains and he'd move them through and he just kept, go back to the start, work through again, and just how settling that was for him. And for another little friend, we were building up pillows at the end. So he'd go through the tunnel and he just loved knocking the pillows over on the other side to come out. And, probably not too dissimilar to what you said with your activity, where it's using their strengths, using their interest, but they're just getting so much good proprioceptive input through their muscles and their joints and their tendons, all with the intention of helping them ground and settle within their nervous system and get ready for the things they need in their day. So that's, the power of proprioception has been my go-to these last few weeks. It's been awesome.
I think I was saying the last episode, end of last year with Edith about you can, if you're still at home, it's still school holidays now at the moment, obviously, but if you're still at home, you can get some of those Christmas presents or whatever. They're probably still in the window of motivating toys or things that you've got a couple of weeks after you've got them, but certainly use those in your play. That will increase the motivation as well. So some nice things there.
What's yours?
Oh yeah, sorry, I was just going to move on, but mine, mine was got a couple. I might go. Well, speaking of, I'll go off of yours. Borrowed local library.
Yeah.
Has some great stuff, and I thoroughly recommend if you've got a local library that has a toy library or something like that.
Yeah, how good.
To go suss that out. My son and I went and got a those expandable tunnels, the ones that retract and accordion style ones.
Yeah.
He was interested in that, so we got one of those, and then next thing you know, we've turned our couch into a tunnel slide, and
so good.
There was lots of him going down, then Snoopy going down, then everybody had a line up going down there. But it was just at that time of the day where I think it was really hot one day, and we're like, we just can't. It's just too hot to go outside.
Yeah,
and I've blown the pool up, the blow up pool with water enough, just for one day. Let's try some inside stuff in the aircon. And there was just lots of going down the slide, like different ways of going down the slide. Let's go down on our tummy. Let's go down our back. Something he's pretty fearful of, actually.
Okay.
Generally in the playground. So, increasing that tolerance and trying to
How good.
build that skill. But I just think the regulating aspect of it was being able to really, you talked about proprioception, that vestibular component of that movement, that slide, the body really getting a lot of that input as well. Really,
What did you use to
worked
make the
for him.
slide? I can imagine the tunnel resting on something to go down, but what
it
did
was
you
the
use?
other half of the couch. So the couch pillow folded out and
Oh, yeah, I can picture that.
Yeah, right.
Having it on the
So-
diagonal.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, just and our couch has got just enough height where the other side, which has the chocolate stain on the back of it. But anyway, we used that side and slid down, and yeah, it was great.
So good.
Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome.
So anybody that's got any of those things at home, certainly some things to do for the next week or so.
I think we do hear sometimes, when I think about our spaces at OTFC, we've got lots of sensory-based, big moving equipment that you can access, but with all those things that we've spoken to there, it's just using, what you have at home and showing that you can still get that same input. Might have to get a little bit creative, but seeing how much they can enjoy that can be really cool.
Should we get on to some questions for the
Yeah,
week?
sounds good.
Got a couple of questions here. I think these are, both are from some interaction from some various people online. Actually, both, in fact, are actually clients.
Yeah, which is awesome.
Yeah, I love when clients
that.
ask us questions. It means that they are wanting to learn beyond what they're doing in their therapy and thinking about stuff beyond that. So it's kind of a goal of therapy, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
So our first question was, how do you help people listen to their body? Which came from, as I said, one of our clients, a young person who is, I think, really trying to explore how to increase her own sense of self-control in lots of ways.
Yeah.
As she gets older, and this is a really insightful question. I don't know what you do that works for you in terms of listening to your body, but I know in previous episodes we've talked about things like interoception, but for some of the younger clients in particular, I think some of those concepts can be tricky
Yeah.
to deliver when you use too much jargon or you use too many
Yeah, that's
big
true.
concepts or big words. So I think the way I'd answer it is going, how do you help people listen to their body across the lifespan?
That's a good question. Yeah.
If that helps.
Yeah.
Because it'll answer this young person's question, but also might even help some people out there, give a bit of insight into how you can help a younger person on that. So I'll give you actually my own example on this. I had the other day, my dad called me and he said, he was looking after my son, and he said, I just noticed the other day when I was with him that he said, my body is not regulated, or I can't regulate my body.
Yeah.
And I think he wasn't quite sure how to answer it. And he called me the next day and said, look, I just want to talk about that. He said this to me, and I'm like, is that too much for a 4-year-old
Yeah.
to be thinking? And I'm like, look, that's a really fair question, Dad. Like, I think that is a big, like those words are a big concept to actually, what does regulate actually mean? And I explained to him that we don't necessarily use that word, but maybe other people have used that.
Yeah.
But he's able to associate, maybe his ELC they've used that, but he's able to associate the fact that he didn't feel in control of his body and tie that to regulation, to go, there's something not quite right with what's going on for me internally that I need to tell you that, like, I'm not in control, or I can't regulate, or something's not quite, I can feel that something's not quite right.
Yeah.
And I said to my dad, and the reason we use some of that language is to give him the confidence to be able to speak up, to say, I'm not feeling okay, or something feels different, and I just need you to know.
Yeah.
So you can either help me, or you can support in changing what needs to happen there, changing how I feel.
Yeah.
But if I don't have the language, or I don't have that awareness, then I can't pick up if there's a change in the first place.
For sure. And I get that it can be very frustrating for some of our younger friends when they are still building their language, but they can have those body cues, but they can't pair it with the words to express that to other people too. Really tough. But I think even, you've got a very clever little friend at home. But even just showing, I think, how helpful it can be to model that kind of language. And like you said, he's associating that. He's heard that from somewhere. He's using it appropriately. So whether that's you framing that for him at home, potentially going, I can feel myself feeling this. I'm going to go and listen to music really loudly, which I know that you like to do.
Yep.
Or even if, they're modelling that in those childcare early learning centre spaces as well, like something's not feeling right or my body's telling me I need to move, I'm going to go and do this. And then he can start to see that over time and start making sense of that for himself as well. I think there can be almost like this sliding scale when you're talking about regulation over a lifespan, where it's the level of support that's needed and that independent understanding of what your body's requiring and seeing that almost shift. So in earlier stages, having a higher level of support to model, label, give tools, where that awareness perhaps sits a little bit lower, and then seeing that shift as a support reduces but the awareness increases.
Yeah.
And that can look so different for any young person depending on where they're at developmentally or where their needs and differences lie. And I think meeting them where they're at rather than going, even hearing your dad say, oh, is that too much for a 4-year-old? But actually he's using that and he might not understand the full breadth of what that looks like, but he is, as you said, trying to say something's not right. There's something that I'm needing. I'm going to ask for help. So I think, and go obviously the inverse as well when it's, perhaps we don't have that same language skill, but we're still trying to communicate in a different way, whether that might be through sensory seeking behaviours or might even be big emotions because we're not feeling in control and we're trying to regain that. So, yeah, I think to help people in listening to their body, a really helpful place to start is saying things out loud yourself, modelling that for them, and in addition to the tools and next steps, if you're not feeling okay, if you're feeling a certain way, what do you need from there?
The other thing I often think about is if you're not trusting your body, I think that's where it starts. Like body trust is so important. So
true.
Interoception does have a lot of facets to it, but one of the key or the foundation, the cornerstone, not the cornerstone, that's at the top. The foundational element of interoception is being able to trust your body. And I think for a lot of young people, particularly neurodivergent people, they don't always trust their body. And so the signals that are coming through are not always interpreted in the way they want them to be interpreted. And that fuzzy signaling becomes quite complicated and quite frustrating, as you said. And so how do we develop that trust? And the best way of doing that is by doing modelling. Someone else models that. And yes, everybody's experience is different, so it's hard.
Yeah.
I might feel hungry with that sensation, but someone else might feel something different. Yeah. But being able to say, that's okay, I'm just modelling that I'm trying to listen to what my body's telling me.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. So developing trust can really come down to if you can tell me how, and if it's someone that's non-speaking, how can you do that visually via pictures or point where it is that might be not feeling great, or you're showing me, say, for example, you're jumping around and saying, that looks like the body's a picture of someone that's really, really excited. Like that's what you're needing, can then help give that context and help give that capacity to communicate what's required.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's so important because when we're listening to our body, we have an idea of what's going on, but other people around don't know, right? So only you know what's going on internally. Yeah. And so the only way that you can tell someone else is what's going on is if you have a way to communicate that.
Yeah.
And when you don't have that, or you're not quite sure, then it's quite hard.
Yeah. And I feel like perhaps we've pulled at that thread of interoception, but it's so interesting, isn't it? Because as you said, everyone's internal experience is different. So knowing that, we want everyone to be their authentic and truest self, and whatever that experience looks like for that person, we don't necessarily want to always label that for them when that can look different for different people, but that experience is still valid and correct. Yeah. And so even as an example, every time before we start this podcast, I have to have a giggle about something because it's almost like the anticipation going in. I'm really ready to have a chat. We talk about it as me needing to get my sillies out, but that's actually just how that, excitement, nerves, whatever that looks like kind of comes out for me. But I know this is a safe space that when I have that giggle at the start, then we know we're good to go. You know what I mean? And there's no one, I can see how that might look in a classroom space where someone might be like, stop being silly, it's make sure that you're listening, but actually I'm trying to get my body ready to go. And I've started to learn, well, that's actually just what I need before I go into this space. And I should honour that because then I can regulate and be what I need to be going into this. And that's
And that's listening to your body.
That's listening to your body, yeah. And knowing that, well, it's okay to have, that's what my body needs. I can listen to it in that moment. And I can imagine it's really tricky too, perhaps when, for those that might experience a more muted experience when it comes to their internal sensations. And maybe there are certain cues that we might not be able to interpret until they're really intense, or that might just be something that we find really hard to cue into altogether. But I think the more that we can explore that and give opportunities to pause and listen, then we can start to bring in that trust and the strategies to help with that. So I guess in answering that question more broadly, how do we help people listen to their body? We were looking at things like modeling, so people can start to see what it's like to voice that authentic experience and label those things. You might even use cues to, opportunities to check in. My body's feeling like this. How's yours feeling? What does your body need? Or this is what I'm seeing. What do you think might be helpful at this point? With the idea being that potentially over time we can start to reduce the external supports as we build up the internal registration. Have I missed anything there?
That's good. I think it gives a lot of things to think about. The next question is also a bit about the regulation, and it's...
Yeah, I think a good link with some of the things that we've been chatting about.
Yeah, it's actually, can you do a podcast? So could have almost dedicated an entire episode to this maybe, but in how to regulate yourself without annoying your other family members with vocal stimming. Because sometimes I don't realise when I keep singing and making a bunch of noise, except people keep having to remind me every 2 seconds.
Yeah.
I think this happens for a lot of people, actually. They're doing something that either whistling is the first one that comes to mind for me, that can be something that could be annoying for other people, or something that can be, I don't really want to listen to you making noise at the moment because I'm trying to concentrate on something cool, or I'm in the middle of, watching something on TV and there's someone whistling in the background, and that becomes a distraction. But the fact that in this question, vocal stimming, if I bring it out to any other sort of stimming behavior, any other sensory regulatory strategy, that's probably the question. I guess the only thing here is that something that's vocal creates a noise, whereas something that's a physical stim is quite silent, and so you can get away with that, if you will, without impacting or disturbing other people as much.
And when we're talking about stimming, right, we're talking about those, I guess, kind of feel-good responses that might help us regulate, or the things that our body just naturally does across the day, where a lot of these things can have that sensory focus, where it's bringing in that input that helps us regulate, helps us do the things that we need to, helps us feel organised. It might be at times that release, or something that we're just needing to do to keep that attention on the task that we're doing.
100%.
So, lots of different purposes for those I can appreciate.
Yeah. And I guess that's the other thing is stimming in general is more and more, people are more and more aware of it being an important thing for a lot of people, not just neurodivergent people, but anybody that needs to move or do something with their body. It's a way of ensuring that the nervous system is regulated, which we all want. We want to maintain an effective level of arousal. So how would is there anything at home that you find in your household where the other person does something that is a bit annoying, that might be considered? Yes?
Oh, I wasn't going to say annoying. I was nodding along where before you said annoying, but I recognise that there are those different sensory needs.
Yes,
that maybe look a little bit different to my own preferences. Yeah. My husband is such a he's always leg moving, tapping. He just constantly tapping. And I don't even think, I think if I asked him if he knew he was doing it, he'd have no idea. But I also, I think, have that understanding of, well, it doesn't really bother me too much, but it's, gives him that input that his body's obviously looking for. And I know for me, I'm such a, I'll fidget. I always like to have something in my hands, and I'll be, spinning my access tag at work, or holding on to something, or I probably didn't ever even realize that's what I was doing until exploring those opportunities with the clients in the OT space that I had the chance to reflect myself and go, oh, I am someone that really responds to having something to fidget with. What does it look like in your house?
Well, I think it's quite varied, and I think that, you add in a child or children in that environment, and you get quite a dynamic sensory experience.
Yes.
And so everybody has.
I
their own.
Loved your wording there.
But it is,
it's very encompassing.
Yeah. I think that's the challenge at times is that the question is really pertinent because you add someone else into that space, and it was mentioned that I don't even realize when I'm singing and making a bunch of noises. As you said, your husband doesn't realize when he's tapping. And I guess when we don't realize we're doing those things, that's just our body's natural response.
Yeah.
And that comes back to the original question of trusting and listening to your body. So you needed to do that in that moment, or you're helping the body's needing something to help regulate you. And for this person, like those vocal stims are something that they need.
Yeah.
And so I've never been one to say, let's curb stimming or let's stand that out. But I am certainly someone that can sympathise and say, well, what's a different stim or a different sort of approach that we can use that can get a similar input that might be a balance between, yes, I'm getting an input, but it's not as impactful for other people in the environment. So I could use this example in the classroom space where if someone's doing a lot of verbal stimming in a classroom space, that would be disruptive for the class.
Yeah.
But what are the sensory components of that verbal or vocal stim? Is it the vibration of the noise? Is it that something has to be in the mouth?
Yeah.
And the mouth is getting an input. And so whenever I look at this or any question to do with stimming or any sort of self-regulatory strategy, I'm going, well, what's the essence? What's the basis of what's going on here? And how does it afford more effective regulation? And how is this person being able to modulate?
Or how can we give them additional tools to meet that sensory need? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there might be things that, they haven't discovered. And it could be that vocal stimming is the best and it seems to work the best and they like to sing and they go, well, okay, let's make sure we add that in our day. Let's do a karaoke every hour is karaoke hour for, well, not karaoke hour, but every hour we've got 5-minute karaoke.
I'm here for it.
Yeah, sing-alongs. And I think that can be another way of I guess, tying that into it and making it something that is afforded or, or allowed or acceptable without it being something that is seen as a stop doing that or that's a negative. Because I look at this and this person's written in and said, how can I stop myself or what can we do that doesn't annoy other people? And that annoyance is that other person feeling that, as opposed to the person that's making the stim, the other person is feeling that annoyance. If you can reframe it and get the other person to see this is something that's really important for them,
so true,
and helps them regulate, then it might be flipped in terms of a negative word like annoying to a positive word like a regulating thing.
Yeah. And I can see you're just doing what you need to like concentrate and be present here with me, and that's really cool.
And it could be distracting and saying, look, that's a bit distracting for me, or I'm just letting you know that, and drawing awareness to it, or even problem solving that person. Like, next time can we X, Y, and Z, or what are some other things we can do to support that? And if it's something as often as something that happens where they don't realise, then the only way that they're going to know is if someone else points it out. And if you're constantly having something pointed out as a negative connotation, then you're going to think, I need to cut that out. If you're getting it pointed out as I notice you're doing that. Is that something that you need to do? Is that something you like to do? Automatically shifts to let's problem solve as opposed to
so true. Yeah.
Something that's quite accusatory, like you've done something wrong.
Yeah.
And without getting too much into it, this comes right back to that whole double empathy model where a neurodivergent person, you're a typical person, might have different views or ways of experiencing or processing things. And it's so important to have that balance of being able to see both perspectives and being able to find that middle ground. Yeah. And sometimes it comes to reframing how you see something, because a neurotypical person might see that as annoying, whereas a neurodivergent person sees that as
needed,
required. Exactly.
Yeah. I really like, I guess hearing in that, so reframing that. But if we're doing so to go, just I can hear that you're singing at the moment. Is your body, needing something? Are we perhaps we're needing something for our regulation? Like, can we go and do this for a little bit? Or, you're almost using that as a cue to go, well, your body's telling you it needs something. So is there a way that we can almost intensify that? Because I wonder if having had the chance to regulate in a more purposeful capacity in coming back, does that then help reduce some of those elements? Because you've really been able to fill that need. And whether it's, I guess you could do that in the inverse too and proactively go, when I come home, I'm going to crank the music, I'm going to hang in my room, and I'm going to sing, I'm going to dance, and I'm going to do those things that feel really good for me. Then when I come out of that space, does that shift what it looks like moving on from there?
Yeah. Do you have any, just as a side note to the question, do you have any sort of oral regulation strategies that you use? I'm a big chewer of gum.
I was just going to say, I feel like especially in that, adolescent teen age range, I think chewing gum can be really good because it's not only the mouth movements to get that oral motor input, but it's also there's that taste, that strong taste you can get too. So you can sort of intensify that experience even further with some of the different flavors and things that you can get. So actually that's where my mind immediately went to. But, I guess there's those classic like chewy items and things like that. Say if you were doing homework and you had something chewy at the end of your pencil that in between doing your task or working at the computer, you can have that input might meet that need. There's lots of like vibrating like toothbrushes and things like that too. So like you said, if it's a vibration piece as well as the auditory, is that something that we could be using whilst we're sitting and watching something? Does it, meet the need in that same way?
Do a podcast. There's a lot of talking there.
Yeah.
If you want to do that, that's certainly
and singing too. You can help come up with our new theme song.
Well, there you go. Now you've put a call to action.
Yeah. We're taking submissions, guys.
We have to be serious about that. Well, I think it's probably a good place to wrap it up then. Both questions actually tied into each other nicely, and I'm glad. Sometimes we don't always have episodes that have a common theme, but I think this one certainly could be a lot to do with listening to your body and finding regulation strategies that help that. So for two clients who had questions, you've asked questions and hopefully we've provided some answers to those, and maybe we need to do that more in the therapy sessions with them as well.
Yeah, I think that sounds really good.
Certainly things they can continue on with and maybe work with their OTs on. So these questions come via our Instagram. Mm-hmm. We also have an email, podcast@otfcgroup.au. So please feel free to send through questions to that as well. Otherwise, yes, you can find us on Instagram. And if you do like what you're hearing, please share it with others. We certainly hope to make these episodes more than just us talking. Although sometimes it might feel like that. It's kind of, I often refer to it as like PD in your pocket, a bit of extra PD for anybody that's out there as an OT or allied health professional.
Yeah.
Parents, clients, anybody. If you have something you want to ask us, then we will try and answer it and hopefully provide some further thought. Thank you again, Eleanor, for joining me today.
Thanks, Michael.
And we'll do one last quick shout out to Mr. Fletch.
Yeah, shout out to Mr. Negotiator. Hope you're having a good evening. And we'll see you very soon.
Excellent. Thank you.